Welcome to the Vale Music Industry podcast series brought to you by Vale Music Group. I'm here with Paula Savastano.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Yes. First question. I was reading about you, obviously, and it says that you started out doing opera management, and then you moved over to the pop side of things.
Yes,
What made
yes.
you do the switch?
Classical, not-for-profit is really a tough world to actually survive in. Financially, my finances were my decision. I wasn't getting paid enough to pay off the student loans that brought me into the industry. I had got my master's degree at Miami, which I paid for myself via student loans, and I couldn't afford it. So I saw all my friends succeeding in New York and doing wonderful things. And I said, I could do that. I could be just as successful as them. So I picked up and I moved to New York City.
Cool. And so it definitely was more profitable, I'm assuming.
Yeah. The music business in and of itself is not a very lucrative industry. You have to do it for passion and the love of things. And if you don't have it, run fast and far because it will beat you down. But if you do have the passion, there's just nothing like it.
So now seeing the whole other side of the music industry and where it is, was it weird kind of going into the industry and seeing kind of all of the mechanics behind it and how it's not really what the rest of the public sees?
It was, but my education really helped me prepare for that. We had a lot of speakers come in, like you guys do, and talk to us about what it is like behind the scenes and where you can actually survive in music without being a performer.
Cool.
And that was very enlightening for me during my education years, and that's what kind of inspired me to keep going. So, and pursue, the tough world that it is. So.
And so when you decided to do opera management, was this like personal management type thing?
No, I actually worked, I had a summer internship. I got a paid internship during my grad school years, which for all those college kids, they know that paid internships are impossible to find. I got paid $150 a week plus housing to work at an opera company. And I needed to do an internship for 12 weeks during a summer. So I was like, well, can't beat that. So I went to Colorado. I loved Colorado. I had been out there twice for the Aspen Music Festival. So I went to work for Central City Opera, and I was like, well, I'm not sure about this opera thing, but, I'm a classically trained flutist. So I was like, I don't know if I'll like this opera thing, but, it's worth it. And I fell in love with the art form. It's like theater and band, everything you put on stage, like when a band performs, there's just magic that happens. And I've discovered since then that it really happens a lot of places, not just in opera. Like in pop music, I find that all the time with the stage performances and stuff. So there's actually a parallel there. But I fell in love with that. And then I worked in opera management, I did everything from contracts and licenses of the music to the performer contracts to the scheduling. I was the logistical person, essentially, at two opera companies. And then I left because I couldn't pay my bills. So.
Now, getting the internship and everything, how did you promote yourself and really were you just very diligent about getting people? I know it's hard sometimes as a student to really get there.
It's really tough to get internships. When I was going through school, it was a lot easier. I give kids credit now who are going through it because getting something paid is almost impossible now, whereas it was a little bit more common back when I was in college, which I won't date myself. but I would say getting yourself out there, meeting people, keeping in touch with the people that you meet. Like, you guys will meet so many people at this conference today. Get their business cards, and once every couple of months, follow up with an email. If they don't answer you, it's just because they get 20 emails and haven't had the chance. Eventually, you'll probably get an email. Oh, yeah, great. Sorry it took me so long to respond. At least that's me. It might take me 2 months to respond, but you're sitting in my inbox waiting for a response. But the positive thing is, if you keep it up, even if they don't respond and you keep it up, they will eventually remember you. And when they see you again, or when you contact them and say, I'm looking for an internship, it's like all of a sudden they're, you've sparked their interest.
Yeah.
I actually have 2 interns working with me now that I met in Sherry's class when I spoke in Sherry's class last year.
Oh, wow, cool.
So, yeah, and I remembered them. They contacted me several times. And finally I was like, oh, I need an intern. So,
very cool.
yeah.
And so now you're an awesome flute player. You're great.
Thank you.
So it says that you're a freelance performer still. So has your business ever hindered doing a lot of performing, or do you still just go about it?
When I first went into the industry and was working for other people, I had to put my performance on a back burner. Part of the reason is when you go, especially when you go into like Sony or EMI, and although EMI doesn't exist anymore, you go into one of these companies and they're going to ask you, well, you perform what is your level of performance? What is your goal? Because what they don't want is they don't want somebody who's coming in, taking a job, that their only reason for taking that job is to try and get a playing gig. And so you really have to, whether it's your intention or not, you really have to separate yourself when you're in that interview from your performance. And that was the only way I was able to succeed. And for me, that meant barely playing for 7 years because I just dedicated my life to my music for about 7 years. And then I went back to playing a lot more, especially, and now that I work for myself, I have a lot more time to do it. So, I mean, and your life will ebb and flow that way. I mean, it happens, and you have to put your passions out there and what you take to survive. And for me, survival became most important, which meant getting a job for a while. And now I can work and play. So
that's cool though. Yeah. 7 years though. Wow.
Yeah. I played a couple of weddings and I played now and again, but I didn't play a lot for those 7 years. And yeah.
Yeah. We've been learning kind of how you have to go in there almost like someone who would be an accountant for the music industry, they would rather you just have an accounting degree. But I feel like, do you think that you still need to have that knack for music and that knack? Yeah.
I think that's always given me an edge. And now as an entrepreneurial venture, I find that being that musician has given me an edge above anybody else that's doing it that's not a musician. I have a lot of colleagues that have lost their jobs during the last 4 years due to the industry, and they go out on their own and they're not succeeding as much as I am, and they're not making the connection with the artist. And it's because, well, the artist, they're like, well, you just want my business. I want my artist business, but I also want to protect them. As an artist myself, I respect their art, and I think that's can be a question if you're not tied to the music business, and that's what I see, especially on the entrepreneurial level, which is a very important level at this point in the industry.
Yeah, definitely.
a lot of you guys are going to end up getting your jobs by making them yourself. The industry isn't strong right now as far as record labels are almost non-existent. They're existing on who's there right now. And publishing companies, major publishers aren't hiring. They're just folding into each other. So what's happening now is smaller companies are coming out, and so being more broad-based and having that more entrepreneurial spirit is really, really going to help you in the industry right now. So.
Now, where would you say in the industry it's the most open for people to find jobs? Like, where would you say that it's not completely dwindling?
I will always tell you that where the money is concerned is where the jobs are going to be. The last person that's going to ever be at any company is a person who's bringing in the cash. That is how I sustained in the industry during its ebbs and flows. I've been through a couple of industry real downflows, and I've always had a job because I have always been able to deal with the money, deal with the royalties, understand the legalities behind things. The last person at any company, whether it's the music business or banking or anything is the CEO and the money manager. So, I mean, and it's the person who starts a business. So it really helps to have the understanding behind the legalities, the copyright and the licensing and the royalty aspects of the industry.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about SSA and how you started it.
How I started it. I started SSA because I had a knack for royalties, and I was doing a lot of freelance royalty stuff. And companies were seeking me out because I knew a specific royalty program, which is no longer in existence, called Right Track. But I knew that inside and out. I knew the programming levels, and I knew how to work it, how to build it from scratch. So I was being sought out by companies to do that. Well, and I kept my day job. And one year, actually, it started, the business itself, the LLC started because of tax purposes. I brought in too much money on a 1099 and I had to create the business or take a major tax fee or tax hit. So we created the business, and it was 3 days before the end of the tax season, and my accountant was sitting there, and my now husband, who was we were living together at the time, but he's now my husband. We were sitting with the tax guy, and he's like, "You need to come up with a name that I can clear tomorrow." And his last name is Schmel. So we came up with Savastano, Schmel, and Associates. The associates are our cats. And that's a mouthful. And everyone thought we were lawyers. I was getting calls, you know.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm not a lawyer. I do copyright law, but I'm not a lawyer, you know. And there is a distinguishable difference there. And so for teaching purposes, actually, in using my business as an example, I shortened it to SSA Music.
Yeah.
So it just kind of happened. And then when I rebranded my company 2 years ago, we rebranded it as SSA Music. And it's kind of taken off, and it's been really great. The last couple of years have been kind of cool. So it's scary. I never wanted to be my own boss. I always said I never wanted to work that hard. And I absolutely love being able to do what I want to do and work with the artists the way I want to. So
that's cool. Yeah. And so I'm now, like, you've had all this experience, you're a pool of knowledge. So what kind of things have you done as far as, I've seen that you've spoken at colleges and helped out, well, I mean, obviously you're here, but other things. You
guys started that, actually. You guys invited me to speak at when you guys had a MISA chapter here, MEISA chapter here. That is, for those watching, that's the Music Industry Educators Student Conference, or Student Association, something like that. Sorry. But anyways, your chapter invited me to speak because I was a member, and I was teaching up at William Patterson at the time.
Oh, cool.
And I came, and I just really loved connecting on that level. And I had never spoke except for in a class before, and I was teaching royalties, so that was kind of my thing, so it was easy. And I loved it. And then the next year you guys did your first conference, and I was party to your first conference, and it's been, you know, pretty much uphill ever since, downhill ever since. I don't know. I've really enjoyed it, but you guys started it, and then actually met from here, and this is an education to everybody. From this conference, I met John Harris, who runs Millennium Music Conference. He invited me to speak at Millennium Music Conference. From there, I met Rob Case, who I think you're interviewing later. Yeah. And he invited me to speak at Dewey Beach Music Conference. And so it's kind of all snowballed from speaking at one MISA chapter event. So it's kind of cool and that's a lesson to take, because that's the way this industry works. I can tell you that every single job I ever got in the pop side of the business started because I worked at BMI, and I met people at BMI. And actually, I'm really excited to see Shelly Yakis, because I met him when I worked at BMI, and now he's going to be here later today. So I'm really excited, you know. And awesome. That's the way that this industry works, and it's really important to not burn bridges. Another little lesson I've learned over time, and, you know, keep really positive contact with everybody, and you'll go far. Have the passion. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
My
we have to
pleasure.
wrap things up, unfortunately. I could talk to you all day, though.
That's okay. We'll talk later.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. And for those watching at home, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure.